A few years ago, when my daughter was a toddler, my wife and I used to take her to a nearby lake to picnic, swim, and just unwind. It was a peaceful spot, quiet, not too crowded, the kind of place where you could easily forget about the world for a while. One afternoon, after we'd finished eating, my wife decided to go for a quick swim while I stayed on the beach with our daughter. I watched her wade out into the water, the sun sparkling off the surface. A minute later, she suddenly stopped and turned to me, shouting something. At first, I couldn't make out what she said, but her expression was off. Then I heard her clearly. I think I just stepped on someone's face. I froze for a second, thinking maybe she was joking. But the look on her face wasn't playful. It was pale, almost terrified. She quickly started making her way back to the shore, her legs moving faster, like she couldn't get out of the water fast enough. When she got back to me, she was visibly shaken. She said that while she was swimming, her foot brushed against something soft, and at first, she thought it was a rock or a weird patch of seaweed. But when she pressed her foot down, she felt the unmistakable shape of a face beneath the water, a nose, an eye socket. She swore she felt the hollow of the eye. I considered going in to check it out, but something stopped me. The unease in my gut, maybe. We decided to pack up and leave right after that. The next day, the local news reported that a young boy who had been missing for days was found drowned in that same lake, not far from where we had been. He'd been there the whole time, just beneath the surface. To this day, my wife is convinced she stepped on his face. This was the year 2000, a while ago. Yeah, she's fine, but I don't think she would have been fine if she had reached down or I had found the body and pulled it up or something. It's a small lake, almost a pond. The police said the body was not found where we were, which was at the public swimming area. We think they were either lying to avoid alarming the public or the body drifted. In hindsight, we should have reported. We were young and stupid and allowed denial to creep in on the way home. That all went away with the news story. Okay, I never really post anything on Reddit, mostly just reading, so please excuse me if I do or say anything that isn't common courtesy here. In around 2018/19, I, 25F, at the time was 18/19, was living in Nebraska, where I grew up. I lived in the largest city in Nebraska, but it was still essentially surrounded by corn and wheat fields. The city was expanding, so rich folks started building huge houses with giant properties on the edge of town as things proceeded to grow. All of that being said, I had a good friend whose parents' house was one of those big ones right on the blurring line between the fields and the city. My friends and I were constantly hanging out at his place because it was fun. They had tons of property to ride 4x4s on, a hot tub, a huge living room for us to watch sports, and have reality TV binge sessions, etc. Plus, his parents were super cool, and we could drink out there as long as we stayed at the house. It was tons of fun, even though I am quite scared of the dark, so I would just not go outside after a certain time because there was little lighting, and the nearest neighbor was about a mile away. I always felt a weird energy driving to from his place if it was late at night, but never had anything happen until one night. The drive out there was a long winding two-way road that had thick trees on both sides, and you pass one of the city's largest cemeteries on the way. Barely any lighting, of course, besides the street lamps every once in a while, and very little traffic. It's all inherently a bit creepy, and I'll admit to having sped through this section of road many times to get through it as quickly as possible. This specific night was perfect spring weather, so I was driving with my windows down listening to music, and it was around 10 p.m. I was coming around one of the curves in the road when I had to essentially slam my brakes on. Right in front of me in the middle of the road, maybe 50 yards away, was what looked like a family. Again, picture a completely pitch black road with thick forest on both sides, and only my headlights to show what's in front of me. This was a family of three: a tall, slim woman, an average height-weight man, a child, short hair, but couldn't tell the gender based on the clothing and couldn't see their face. Maybe around 8 years old, and the mother was pushing a fucking stroller. Their clothes looked normal, not tattered but not nice. They also were not carrying any kind of light source, meaning before I arrived behind them in my car, they had been walking in the pitch black. They were all facing away from me, walking completely silent in the middle of the street the same direction I was heading. I had turned my music down to hear if they were speaking, had music playing, etc. They didn't. The hairs on my arms immediately stood up. I came to a stop in the road behind them, obviously, and just sat there for a moment to let them move. They seemed to be completely unaffected by me and didn't even turn their heads slightly, nor did they attempt to move out of my way. I literally thought I was going insane, or that I was dreaming. It was so surreal. Before I really had time to fully process and register what I was seeing and how truly strange it was, they all, at the same time, stopped walking and very slowly turned to face my car. This scared the absolute shit out of me. I honestly didn't even give myself enough time to look at their faces as they turned. I immediately threw my car in reverse and sent it backwards for probably a full 20 seconds before flipping a U-turn, nearly running myself off the road and booking it the other direction. The only thing I remember noticing is that the stroller looked to be completely empty. This was the part that sticks in my mind the most. I've never felt terror like that in my life. I checked my rearview mirror probably 1,000 times before getting to a main road and never saw a glimpse of them. In fact, I never saw a glimpse of them ever again. I tried asking my friend and his family about it, only to essentially feel like I was insane because of the way they looked at me. Every time I tell this story, I get one of 3 reactions. They immediately think I'm fucking cuckoo, think I'm lying, or have had something sort of similar happen to them. I really don't care if no one believes me, honestly. It was, and still is, the creepiest thing to ever happen to me. I think about it all the time. It was either some weird-ass family trying to scare the shit out of someone, a distraction for an attempted robbery, assault, etc., or it was something more sinister. I'm going to tell myself for probably the rest of my life that it was the first option. I work in a haunted mansion. Literally, I'm a behavioral health technician, and I got a new job back in September at what's considered a luxury drug and alcohol rehab facility. The facility is a huge mansion that on the outside looks like a mix of the bank's Bel Air mansion on the Fresh Prince or a mini White House. It's 3 levels, has 13 rooms that all have private bathrooms with jacuzzi tubs. There's a gym, 3 living rooms, a huge commercial kitchen, a ballroom, yoga studio, a doctor's office, a huge garden, and an elevator. My first week, I had 2 clients tell me it's haunted, and I laughed it off. My schedule is 11 p.m. to 7:30 a.m., so the majority of the time all the clients are asleep and it's just me and a nurse in this huge house, so it's quiet. My office is on the 2nd floor. The nurse's office along with the kitchen and huge pantry are on the 1st floor. The pantry is locked at all times and the nurse has the key. A couple of weeks ago, the nurse came stomping up the stairs yelling at me saying I scared her hiding in the pantry. I'm lost because I hadn't left my office. And when I tell her that, she goes pale and she's like, "You weren't just in the pantry and yelled knock knock." I say no. How could I be when you have the key? She walks out. 10 minutes later, I hear her talking, so I go down to her office, and she's down on her knees praying in Punjabi. At 6 a.m., the chef and handyman clock in, ask how our night was, and I jokingly say, "Casper scared Nurse L in the pantry." The chef says, "Ooh, that's K if it was in the pantry." I'm like, WTF? He then goes on to say he's worked here for 15 years and it used to be a retirement home, so lots of residents passed away here. He named off certain residents and where their ghosts have been seen, saying they've always been kind, not malicious type hauntings, etc. Nurse L put in her 2-week notice and is no longer here. I hear footsteps, lights flicker, and the fireplaces randomly come on, but I haven't had anything actually speak to me like Nurse L though. My pay is significantly higher than average, and my supervisor says it's because he can't keep Enoch shifts staffed. I think it's because it's haunted, and my pay is too good to scare me away.